You are a somewhat rational mind in a biological body. That means that whatever you reward, you reinforce, and whatever you punish or deprive, you disincentivize. Meaning that if we want to live a certain life and we have a certain goal that is aligned with that life, we need to make it so that whatever actions that we do that help us in that direction are rewarded, and whatever actions take us away from it are interrupted or completely punished so they are not repeated. Now there's a reason why the title is Rewiring and it's not Detoxing, as you may have seen it a million bazillion times all over YouTube. In my experience, it's way too easy to slip back into bad habits once whatever time period you've assigned for yourself is up, and that means that slow, gradual changes have almost always worked better. If you haven't already guessed, we're leaning a little bit on James Clear's Atomic Habits along with some other books like Dopamine Nation, my research, and my own personal experience. So I want you to think of the relationship between pain and pleasure as kind of like opposites on a seesaw. Once either of them tips too heavily in one direction, it needs to correct itself back to a level state, homeostasis. That's the natural state that our body is in and is always trying to return back to whenever there is some sort of imbalance, a leveling between the external and internal environments. Whenever you feel too hot, your body will sweat to try to cool you off. Feel too cold and you'll start to shiver and rub your hands together trying to get some warmth back into you. In the same sense, whenever you expose yourself to too much dopamine as some rough indicator of pleasure, you'll feel like garbage for a bit after that. Don't believe me? Alright, how do we all feel after doom scrolling on TikTok or YouTube Shorts for a few hours? Yeah, even worse if we have an important assignment or exam due very soon after. Yeah, I thought so. On the other hand, even though doing the work itself isn't really fun and it can feel quite painful in the moment, we feel a sense of comfort and relief the moment that is done. And the bigger the obstacle or the more daunting it was in our minds, then ever bigger the sense of relief and happiness even. Like after a finals exam or a performance review that just got done and you did well on it. These are fundamental facts that we all experience as we go through our days. They affect our thoughts, our willpowers, and the behaviors that we do in the future. Alright, I hear you saying that must mean it's time for a dopamine detox, right? Like the other 20 gazillion videos out there floating into oblivion about it. No! What did we just say? I'm gonna freaking slap you. I mentioned it already briefly, but I don't think it's the right approach. Generally, with most things, to be honest, we as people are just not very good at dealing with sudden drastic changes. It's why you hear about people doing sudden crash diets trying to lose all the extra weight that they've gained only to revert back to the exact same count and even higher. You can take that approach if you've made drastic changes to your lifestyle before and you know how the process goes of keeping it and keeping that structure going in a healthy way. But because most people haven't done that, it's going to be largely unsuccessful for them. For context, I've worked out every single day for the last 9 months or so. Not a single day was missed except for the literal can't get out of bed type of sick. Every time I tried to go from 0 to 100 before them doing sudden jumps in activity, it has never stuck. The only thing that did work is doing a little then slowly and gradually building up on it. And that's why it's the approach that I generally recommend and have a better outlook on it. I mean, it does make more sense with the way that we are wired. In Atomic Habits, there are 4 stages for any habit: cue, craving, response, and the reward. The cue is a stray thought or some sensory input reminding you of it, seeing it, hearing it, smelling it, touching it, whatever. Craving is the desire for the effect that it brings you. Response is your action towards it to actually attain it, and reward is the experience of having that change of state that you were looking for. It's the entire reason for a habit and it's the reason why it exists. No reward, no habit. It's why you hear so much about the idea of cheap dopamine. Cheap here just means that it doesn't require any real effort to attain. Any habit that ultimately gives cheap dopamine will have a tendency to overrule your life. Have you seen how the casino slot rooms look like? It looks like a freaking zombie apocalypse went off in there. Every lever pulled is a flood of that chemical, which means that you never leave your seat because it is continuously reinforced without ever stopping. It's also why you're told to just eliminate them altogether. They're too OP, they're too strong, they break the dopamine scaling system. Any habit that you want to create or reinforce is done by making any of those 4 stages easier, or even better, all of them. That means easier to perceive, to notice, make it more rewarding so that you remember it better and seek after it more, or just easier to do, reaching it faster and with less effort. Any habit that you want to reduce or altogether eliminate, you just reverse those 4 things that we just mentioned. That means, for example, if you have a smoking habit, you can't smoke if you don't have any cigarettes. They have 1/100th the nicotine content. You have to cross a border to get them, and you need to flicker your lighter 100 times. That is great and all, but how do we make it into that slow, gradual thing that you were talking about? Well, the goal of every habit is to make it into your lifestyle, the default, the thing that you automatically go to. And to give you a light at the end of that tunnel, we're looking at this graph mainly. You only have to keep doing it until the activation energy and the willpower that you need to pull it off is just as easy as what you're doing right now, the default for your current state. There are enjoyable structured things that you do throughout your day anyways. You eat, you take a nap, and you hang out with friends. Allegedly, I think, or so I've heard. For example, you wake up, that's the cue, you want to stop feeling groggy and tired, that's the craving, so you go and make yourself a nice cup of coffee and you drink it. That's the response. Reward, you stop feeling groggy and tired. The easiest changes to make will always be to the habits that are already baked into your day at some level. So instead of using coffee to make yourself wake up, you can still use exercise. It doesn't really matter so long as it delivers the same change of state. Wake up, want to feel alert, so you exercise, now you feel refreshed and awake. Reward achieved. You'll only be using your willpower to go through the habit until you cross that habit line in the graph. After that point, it will be just like any default normal action in your day, and it won't require much effort. Then, finally, to tie it into actual business, because that's the point of this entire channel, is that you will take whatever new habit that you form and you stack it on top of an old already existing one. Tie a bunch of those together and you have a fully functional business workday. And that's typically how my free day goes, actually. You finishing your workout can be a cue in itself, wanting to keep that winning streak going, accomplish more stuff and add more to your win list, and so you sit down, you start working until whatever task that you set out to is done, and you gain that feeling of accomplishment and having worked hard, satisfying that craving and then moving on to the next and then the next. At first, you'll have to kind of artificially boost the rewards a bit because you still haven't derived enough internal reinforcement from it to propel you forth. It will still be below that habit line that we mentioned. It's why after the first work block for the day, I'll almost always go to eat lunch. Food kind of always reinforces whatever came before it, so it works out great. Then after my second work block, I go take a walk and eat a snack. You can kind of see a pattern forming here. You take one habit and you focus all of your time and attention into designing your environment to make it as easy and simple as possible to do while making it as rewarding as possible. You focus on it until it just becomes an automatic default kind of thing you do in your day, then you go on to the next. And that is how you rewire your dopamine, but to success. If you found this helpful, I'd appreciate you sticking around. I do have a business newsletter where I go into more of this stuff, but in kind of written form. And with that, I hope I'll see you soon. Bye.